Batel?
Oh, okay, it's being recorded. Okay, got it. Okay. So I just the stakeholders, I'll just say quickly, play a role in the project because they actually provide the financial basis for its existence, and also by participating in the subjects and issues that are addressed by the municipality, actually. So it gives the citizens an opportunity to affect city policy and national policy, which is really where we need to go more and more. So today's subject is trees in the city and how we can try to protect them. And I'd like to welcome Gary Schiff, who's our guest speaker for the evening. He is an Ole Chadash and also a stakeholder. Welcome, Gary. I look forward to hearing about your consultant skills, and you'll obviously say more about that when you start speaking.
May I just interject and say, please, everybody, mute yourselves. I see some people who aren't muted.
Oh yeah, I can't hear anything actually. Okay.
Just before.
And then after Gary's been speaking, Noga Rippin, who is the latest, our newest intern, she'll speak about the latest grant that the JGF has been given to preserve trees in the city. And then we'll have a question and answer at the end and close the meeting. So I'll leave the floor to you, Gary.
But just before we give the floor to
yes.
Gary, I want to give a special welcome because Lisa Friedman is with us. I hadn't realized she was on the second screen, so I didn't notice. Lisa Friedman is one of our firm donors and supporters, and she's come here all the way from Los Angeles. So we're very pleased to have you, Lisa, and welcome. I didn't interrupt otherwise.
My pleasure.
Oh, that's right.
And it felt like a short commute today. So thank you. Good to see you all.
Okay.
Okay,
Sorry,
so
Gary.
over to Gary. Thank you. Oh, it's fine.
Well, thank you all very much. I'm going to do this with a quick PowerPoint, if you don't mind. I hate to do that, but I'm going to see if I can't pull this up. I think Batel maybe help me if I don't get this quite right. Let me see if I share screen, and then I can go down here and see if I can't find it, which now I can't. Hold on.
Bottom of the screen, green light.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I got that, but it's not coming up. Batel, maybe I could send you the PowerPoint. I don't know how else to do this.
Okay, so just you hear me? When you click on share screen, it opens your window and choose the screen that you want to share. In other words, the one where your open PowerPoint is, and then you hit present and that's it.
Okay, let me see if I can't do that. I have it open right now. Maybe I can hit share right now. No? No.
Hey, Batel, I think you have to make him a host to share screen.
You have to make him a
He's already
host.
ready.
He's a host.
Okay. All right. I apologize, guys. Now you've disappeared. Now
Not a big deal, not a big deal.
Give me a sec to find everybody. Now everybody's gone somewhere because I moved my screen around. Wait a minute. Okay, where is everybody?
We're all, it hasn't come up yet, but we're all here, don't worry.
Okay. Okay, there everybody is. Now, okay, I'm gonna hit share screen. It's not one of the choices that I can pull up here. Batel, the other day it was, so I don't know what to do. When we were.
Well, send it to Batel or to me.
Okay, we'll do it. Okay, sorry guys.
That's okay.
All right.
Wait. Perhaps I'll say a few words about activism for trees in Jerusalem. There is a big group of people called Tree Guardians. There are, I think, a few hundred members. They're in a kind of a WhatsApp group, although they're not organized as an amuta in their own right. Some of their members are stakeholders, and they are fighting an ongoing battle to preserve urban trees. They present objections when trees are threatened, and they constantly try and intervene in the process on behalf of Jerusalem's trees, many of which are very old and wonderful trees that tell stories of their own. And one of the things that we noted is this year, marking Tu Bishvat, not Tisha B'Av, sorry, I was mourning the trees, marking Tu Bishvat, a year when we're not planting trees, but for some reason or other, there is no similar ruling that we mustn't cut them down. And they're being cut down right, left, and center. And it's causing genuine distress. I saw in my own neighborhood, they're widening a road temporarily, which has caused the cutting down of about 20 veteran trees. Those trees won't just come back when that lane is no longer needed because the light rail has been laid. So these are things that we have to take into account and think how we get our decision makers to look at the treasures that our trees are in a different light and to see them as one of the most important contributors to green and healthy urban living. We need the trees. We need them. We won't have clean air. We won't have shade. We won't even have shelter when it rains. We will have a very sad city if our trees are diminished and not allowed to prosper as they should. So that's the tree issue generally. And trees now are considered to be an important factor in combating climate change because they absorb carbon, they emit oxygen. They're generally good for us, and a lot of them give us food, fruits of different kinds. So there's really no end to what a tree does.
Oh, there we go. Here we go. She got it. Thank you. Can you hear?
Yes.
Okay. Naomi, first I
Let
want
me
to
know
thank
when you want me
Naomi.
to flip
Batel.
slides. Just say flip and I'll flip.
Okay. Thank you, Batel. Okay. First, Naomi and Batel, thank you very much. What a great organization, and kol hakavod to you, Naomi, for starting what had to be done. I'll just tell you a little bit of background. I worked for the U.S. Forest Service for many years. I was the manager of the forest in the Lake Tahoe area around Carson City and Reno. And then I went to Washington, D.C., and I ran the energy program there for the agency, coal, gas, all of that, oil, all the renewables as well, solar, wind, and hydropower and all of that. So then I ended up being on the Hill, and I oversaw the U.S. Forest Service for the House Natural Resources Committee. And the urban tie comes at the end, because I ended up working with the National Association of State Foresters. I was their guy in DC. And one of the things the state foresters, the 50 state foresters in the United States, what happens is they receive money from the federal government, and that money is then sent to the cities, and those cities are required to develop urban forest plans. So the state foresters are trying to get every city to have an urban forest plan, to have that plan updated, to have people involved. And so my job was basically to go to the Hill and to go to staffers and make the case for urban forests and why they're important, and why the Forest Service is involved, and why money is needed so there can be active urban forest program. So with that, Batel, you want to flip here? That's my story anyway. So one of the things just quickly here is you find out all the people that care about, we found out all the people that care about trees at a national level, they find it at the local level. And then we have a coalition. That's what we did. We had a coalition of supporters and people that you wouldn't think would necessarily be excited about trees and open spaces. And it's a much broader coalition than you'd think. Okay, one more. Okay, so I'm not going to open each of these, but I'll just tell you what's in them. And then if everybody wants to look at these, there's many examples. But what we have here is the health benefits of trees. Okay. So in New York, they did a study, Columbia University did a study, and looking at tree density with lower lower asthma rates. In Los Angeles, they did the same things. And what small trees and open spaces do to get into lower asthma rates and lower even hospitalization, runs to the hospital for asthma attacks. So all of that's discussed there. The other thing that's very interesting is there's a study done on healing. That's great. Stay there. That's okay. The study done on healing. And if you have trees or something green out your hospital window, apparently there's a study done that says you heal faster. So, here we have the health community as a potential partner. In terms of crime, we were just there. There's a study in Baltimore. This is interesting. And what the study says is if you have a 10% increase in trees, you have a 12% increase in crime. That's what they said in Baltimore. So, again, you have law enforcement as a potential partner. Let's go to energy. We could, next one. Okay, energy savings. Power Grid International magazine, which is a respected, the power companies, one of their major magazines, notes that if the trees are in the right place, if they're properly placed, you can get 25 to 30% energy savings for single family homes. Now, we don't have a lot of single family homes here, but the principle's the same. If we can get trees in the right place, the energy savings could be significant. The US, they estimated at $30 billion, which is nothing to sneeze at. Okay, next. Okay, business environment, again, another, so besides, law enforcement, health community, the energy community, now we have the business community. And the Journal of Forestry ran an article and it talked about the relationship between streetscapes and customer preferences, and would customers come to these businesses versus other businesses. And there's a very positive correlation with better business activity, where it's a more pleasant place to come. And it's interesting to click on it sometime, take a look. You can just see, the different kind of businesses. If there's no streets, or you can understand as a customer, why you would feel that way. The other thing I want to say about tourism is, Bezrat Hashem, it'll come back, but 30% of Jerusalem's economy is somehow tied to tourism, whether it's hotels or restaurants or whatever it is. And I will tell you, I'm a recent graduate of the tour guide school, and anytime you're going on a tour, and every tourist is spending several days in Jerusalem, you have to find a tree. You have to talk under something because it's hot. And, so people plan their tours based on the trees of Jerusalem. So where they're going to stand with their group. Okay. Let's go to the next one. Okay, watershed, managing watershed and minimizing flooding. I'm sure you've all heard of this. It's obvious, but you're either going to channel when you have a rainstorm. You're going to have concrete to channel the water away so it doesn't do damage, or you have sponges. And how many sponges? What are those sponges worth around a community? New York City estimates it's at $61 a tree. But if you have even single street trees, or even better yet, something bigger, little green spaces, it's enormously important. Saves a lot of money and a lot of concrete. Okay. Next one. Okay. Air filtering, shade. We've talked about air filtering. We talked a little about shade. Batel asked me to talk a little bit about the carbon cycle, and I think most people understand what's going on with carbon, but just in case they don't, the situation is that there are studies, let me just say, there are studies that show, I'll just put it as basic as I can here, that the carbon dioxide that we produce, either from fossil fuels, or they could be wildfires or whatever they are, is having it's like a glass ceiling around the atmosphere, and it traps heat. And the more carbon released into that upper atmosphere, it can have an effect on climate and on warming of the planet, or just in overall weather patterns. And it's a concern. For some people, it's the major concern. Some people, it's important. And whatever it is, it's something that we need to pay attention to. I think there's a lot of discussion that, you get into the discussions of, is natural gas better than, Israel full of wind farms, or Israel full of solar farms, and all those kinds of things, and what's better for our land and for et cetera. But we can be on the positive side. We know that trees, A, store carbon, and B, turn carbon dioxide into oxygen. We are in the white hat world with Jerusalem Green Fund. It's a great place to be. Now, obviously, different trees have different abilities to store carbon. And obviously, the denser the tree, like an oak tree, is going to store more carbon than a palm tree. There's a lot more I could say. I even consult with a company called Sea Tree. Sea Tree is a company that goes around the world, and they help farmers understand how much what's going. They were ex-Mossad spies. I like to say they were spying on people. Now they're spying on trees. And what they do is they in the carbon world, they help estimate how much carbon is coming from the forest and what is growing on an annual basis. So it's important around the world. It's an issue, and we'll do our part. I think the biggest thing though for Jerusalem is the urban areas are heat islands. We know it gets hot if you don't have trees. Anyway, let's go to the next one. Okay, just because we're a Jewish group here, I think we are. I just want to got to put a little spiritual piece to this, right? Trees are compared to people in the Tanakh. The roots are our past. The trunk is our present. The branch are our children and our future. We have a New Year's celebration for trees, and a year to let the trees in the land take the sabbatical, right? We're in a sabbatical year. We have boys named Oren and Erez and Alon. These are all trees, right? Pine, oak, and cedar, and women named Daphna. My wife is Laurel, which is Daphna, which is, the bay leaves that we put in our soup, right? And our national tree, let me just, if I was doing a tour right now, I'd tell you about the olive tree. So let me just tell you about the olive tree for a minute, because this is our national tree, and then we'll go on. But our national tree is an amazing tree. And our national tree...
והיא גם שואלת, למה לא למחזר כבר את כל הפלסטיק הזה? התחקיר של יונתן רווה.
Can somebody mute?
Yeah, somebody's not on mute. Somebody is playing a video. Put yourself on mute.
I don't know, can you mute everybody and then we'll open it up? Okay, anyway, okay, so the olive tree is an amazing tree. We know we use the oil to anoint kings and to light the menorah and all of that. It also, it takes, if you would take the xylem and the phloem, the capillaries right inside the bark, it would push the fluid 250 feet in the air. There's no tree really over 100, 120 feet, but that's the sucking power out of the ground. That's how these things live forever. You can cut one down and it'll sucker sprout right up. When we look at an olive tree and we see a big olive tree, we don't know how old it is. I mean, the current rendition could be 300 or 400 years, but who knows how many times this thing has been up and down. And this tree's Saba could have been around at the time of King David. I mean, they're just amazing. And today we have very vital, olive industry, as we all know, and lots of wonderful olive oil. But olive trees are all over Israel, are all over Jerusalem. We know the leaves are very special. It's a deciduous, deciduous leaf tree that doesn't lose its leaves. Many special things about it. Okay, next. Can you advance the slide? Or did we lose Batel? Uh-oh. Okay. I don't know. Let's see what I can do. Can you guys still hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
you don't see the next one? It's urban forest
Okay.
plan.
Oh, okay, got it. Now I got it. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So Jerusalem has something called a climate plan. Somebody's going to talk about this in a little bit. And there's a trees and open space section within that plan, as I understanding. And the mayor's being on a tree planting initiative. Obviously not this year since it's Shemitah year. Let's just go to the last slide. I think there's one more after this. Okay, so the next steps in enhancing the green Jerusalem, and we'll talk about, this is our work, right? To review the plan, to review other plans, to make suggestions and advocate as appropriate, to build a coalition of interested parties. All the interests that we talked about, these are people that are natural allies, to sign a letter, to write, to campaign, to help us, to protect the green. This is of Jerusalem. And anyway, we're living in the capital city of Israel, the holiest city in the world. It ought to be an example for many things. It's an example for Torah learning. It ought to be an example for green, for beauty, for what we do to take care of the environment as well. That's what I got. Okay, we could get rid of that.
Thank you, Gary. Let's do a couple minutes of questions before Noga pops in. So anybody can unmute themselves gently and ask a question.
If you want to take the PowerPoint away too.
You can unshare.
I'd like to ask something. When you're in America as a forester, how was what did you actually achieve, and what was the most what would I say? The best way to achieve it, actually.
In the urban and community forestry world, obviously.
Yeah.
I think we achieved. There's a lot of people that don't think that the Forest Service or the nation had any business worrying about the trees in the city. Let Akron, Ohio, raise the money for Akron, Ohio's trees. There's an argument to be made there, and so we would make the case. We're not taking care of Akron, Ohio's trees. We're just trying to make the quality of life better across the board for all the cities. And so we went with great partners. Davy Tree, I don't have so much of this here because you don't have like National Tree Service interests, but you have all these other groups. So, I think if you're asking me, I think we were effective in getting the funding so that communities could build plants.
Under which department would it be? The energy in the government that cares about trees, or is it just JNF?
You're talking about in Knesset.
The Knesset, yeah.
You see, I was trying to take
Again, I'm not sure if this is an issue that weighs in on.
Someone needs to go on mute.
I'm not sure if the Knesset would weigh in on it. I mean, it could be energy, it could be environment minister, but it could also be just we work with the city. If you work nationally, we're going to make a case for Haifa and everybody else having robust plans. I think
there is new legislation underway to protect trees in the Knesset. And member of Knesset Alon Tal is promoting it. And there has been some discussion as to the wisdom of the legislation, which will need certain modifications. Because one of the things it says is that trees that are not native to Israel should be removed. And there is a problem with that, because we don't want to have invasive species, but something that isn't native is not necessarily doing any harm if it's not invading the territory of other species. And for instance, eucalyptus trees, according to this new law, might just disappear, which might be sad in certain scenarios. So, but he's a very welcoming member of Knesset. He's working closely with our Sustainable Jerusalem lobby and wants criticism of the law to improve it and fine tune it. So we'll be working together with him and looking at that.
Wonderful.
We can also say, Nomi, that you and I have had 3 times scheduled with a different Knesset member to speak about trees, and 3 times Corona has done us in on that as well.
That's true. That's very true.
Okay, Roberta.
Okay, I have a question. I
think this is a question that my husband Bennett has. We couldn't change the names. Yeah. Yeah, how does the plan cover East Jerusalem? And what kind of input do the Jerusalem citizens of East Jerusalem have on the plan?
Who's asking that?
Okay, well, Gary isn't specifically answering questions about Jerusalem per se, just more on general. So we're gonna address our program shortly. Does anybody else have a general question? Francine?
It's just about the way trees are managed individually. I'm from England, from the UK, and I don't understand why in Israel they lop all trees, all city trees. I just don't understand it. It's like, immediately trees start to grow, they lop all the lower branches. And I've never seen this in other European countries. So I don't understand why it's sort of like seems to be like a tradition of managing trees in this country.
To remove the lower branches.
Sorry? Yeah, they lop, literally, majority of city trees seem to be lopped. All the lower branches are always lopped off.
They're always very careful in the public domain that there shouldn't be a tree that knocks people over or something like that.
Yeah, or
And
branches that fall, the lower branches that fall on cars and things, but I don't know, Francine, that'd be a good question.
Yeah, okay. My other question is to do with one of the new ideas is to develop roofs in Jerusalem, as green spaces. And I just wonder whether planting trees in pots, whether you think does that help with, air quality or anything or not?
I think I have to answer that again because of the roof initiative. Where the Jerusalem Green Fund is very closely involved with the roof initiative, and Batel herself is promoting a very special green roof in the neighborhood of Romema, where there's a very ungreen neighborhood, which has one of the biggest roofs in Jerusalem, and the community center where she works on our behalf has asked to make it into a green roof. What the meaning of trees in pots on a roof? What's the meaning of trees in pots anywhere? Can they live out all their lives in pots? I would imagine it's somewhat limiting for most trees, and I would say that you probably wouldn't find the kind of trees you'd find on the ground on a roof. But you could have all kinds of other ways of providing shade there and all kinds of plants and herbs and vegetables, and it's a good place for food growing and for greening and for preserving biodiversity, but not necessarily for trees, which might send their roots down into the building.
There's a place called the Volcani Institute, and I know that they are anything that's imported into Israel, flowers, fruit, vegetables. So I'm wondering if trees that are cut, that you say that are not indigenous to this country, do they go through their process of approving it?
The
Volcani Institute was established long after many trees had found their way into Israel. Eucalyptus trees were brought in to drain the marshes, and there was no Machon Volcani at that time. Australian immigrants brought in the ailanthus trees, which have proved a really dangerous invasive species that can take over a whole area and prevent anything else from growing. So, but I'm sure that additional invasive species would be checked over by them.
Right.
Maybe Richard, you want to go last, and then we're going to move the floor, I think.
Richard had a question. Richard had his hand up very politely.
Richard, take us home.
So Gary, first of all, I love your analogy that if any city in the world should be an example, it should be Yerushalayim when it comes to the way we treat trees. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the municipality had a project within the last year or two about numbering and recognizing the trees within the city, which seemed to be a completely new project because they were never identified before. But I was reading that the new major project for construction at Ramat Rachel is going to do away with hundreds of trees. So there seems to be a disparity between the kavod for trees that exist, but yet when it comes to construction, there's a double standard. You want to comment on that? Because Yerushalayim has a lot of construction, and the question is how many trees will be lost because we're trying to make apartment buildings or commercial centers.
I think this is more for Naomi. I'm not that involved with the city. I just would say this, that we all need a place to live, and wherever we live was once probably a place of trees. That said, you know, that the developers cannot have free reign, and that they need a pushback with an organization and an NGO like Jerusalem Green Fund, who, you know, if we had a place mapped, if we had a city plan, which maybe that exists, or I guess we'll hear more about that, and we could see where the places are planned, where the green spaces we're going to do, what's required of the developers, so that there's some, you know, an organized and green effort to you know, for the city. You know, as much as the mayor, the sidewalks and everything are beautiful, the sidewalks are going to last 30 or 40 years. The trees he plants are going to last, you know, twice that. So it's going to be a legacy. I just, you know, and again, this is not my area yet. I'm not, even though I'm just a new stakeholder, this is Naomi's world. So
I can add some very hard statistics, Richard. I mean, Gary has all the knowledge of what should be done. You're saying what is being done. And we have about a dozen plans in the city. And if we add up the totality of trees that are going to be lost, the new plan for the Knesset, which takes off a few hundred trees, the plan for Reches Lavan cuts down 11,000 trees. The plan for Ramat Rachel, you mentioned yourself. The plan for the Olive Valley between Armon Hatziv and Tzor Baher removes hundreds of ancient olive trees. So the total sum of damage being done could be irreversible. And I think the citizen movement that now we're able to get involved in through Noga, who we're going to hear from now, I think it's wonderful that as the Jerusalem Green Fund, we're able to do it. And we're doing it as a result of a request of a stakeholder at our last annual general meeting. And we've tried to seek ways to fulfill his wish that we do more for trees. And I hope we're going to be able to. And also I hope that Gary will be able to speak to the people in the municipality who are trying to set up meetings for him, because he comes with a lot of wisdom from his professional life. And if he can impart that wisdom to the municipality and explain to them where they're moving, where they're losing out, it may be much better than them hearing some of us that they've heard over and over again over the years talking. So we're hoping, Gary, that you're going to help us in this, and that we'll
I'd be honored to, as best I
make
can.
that connection.
Yeah.
Very clear.
Hi, you guys. Thank you. Thank you, Naomi. I just wanted to share, I mean, this is really very exciting to me because trees are part of my life. Since I was brought up in a little village with surrounded by olive trees. But we all know, at least the people who live in Jerusalem, that there is a law that any builder who cuts down trees for whatever reason has to plant the same number of trees, and there is a registry of that. The problem is that nobody checks on that registry. Nobody makes sure that in fact that happens. And that's a very concrete thing online we can really push for, and it's something that can be done. The second part that relates to that is here we are all, you know, oh, by the way, I just wanted to say to the person from Britain who was talking about the branches and hurting, you know, that's against the law. If you live in a building and somebody passes by and gets hurt, you're liable. So you're supposed to trim your trees. That's also legislation. Why do I make the point about legislation? Because it's not enough. There is also legislation about being wearing a mask when you're X place, but how that is put into action is a different story. And one of the reasons that I am I was part of the establishing the Green Fund is because I think that it's not enough to have a law. You have to really put the effort on educating and enforcing the legal aspects of this sort of thing. And I don't think that we have anybody here from the building industry, for example, do we? They wouldn't be here. We should really solicit them aggressively to be members of the Green Fund. We should find their names and each one of us get to call 5 or 6 of them and say, hey, join us on saving the trees, because I'm not saying that they're bad people, but we haven't made an effort at a personal level to engage them in this effort. And they're very powerful in the government at every level, but especially in Jerusalem, that is trying to add housing units because we don't have enough affordable housing. So I think there's lots to do. And I think having Gary on board as a new person with experience in this area, I'm a physician. I look at all this from a health point of view. And one more thing I want to add, and then I will close. I'm a member also of the World Health Organization Environment and Health Working Group, and really most areas have the same problems that we have. We are not alone in this, and yet there's no unification among the advocacy groups that are shareholders in the sense that they live and care about what happens to their neighborhoods. Because at the global level, as you all know, environmentally speaking, the environment does not recognize borders and nations. It hits us all. Thank you, and I'm really looking forward to pursuing the tree issue very aggressively. Thank you.
Thank you, Harity. I will share with you all, as you know, in Jerusalem, we have a coalition. We have the Sustainable Jerusalem Lobby, which has 9 neighborhood council members. It has businesses, it has schools, kindergartens, educational institutions, academic institutions, civil society organizations. There are 75 organization members of it. And that is one of the reasons that the municipality feels obliged to listen to us and to meet with us when we ask to do so. So very clear that sound advice coalitions are good, and we will try and pursue it, at least at the Jerusalem level, where we can somehow shape our own destinies. Okay, so Batel, what do we do next?
All right, okay. So thank you, everybody, for your questions. Are really good. I'm sure people have more questions. So either at the end of this, if Gary wants to hang out and answer extra questions, that might be possible. Or of course, everybody can email me the same email that you emailed to RSVP to this meeting. You can be in touch with me, and either I can put you in touch with Gary directly or ask us local questions. And we're going to see what kind of local answers we can develop. Speaking of local, Noga Rippin, she's here. Maybe you'll turn on your camera and you're going to introduce yourself about our local, there you are, our local new program on trees. Noga, take it away.
Okay, so hello everybody. My name is Noga. I'm a student in Hebrew University in Jerusalem for geography and environmental science. I started this year. And also a couple of months ago, I began volunteering in the Jerusalem Green Fund in the new project, which is a collaboration between Jerusalem Green Fund and an already existing group of tree guardians, activists of like guarding the trees in Jerusalem and protecting them. And the idea behind this collaboration was, of course, as you all mentioned already, the importance of trees that we all already know, especially in urban environments, and the mistreating of them, although we know this benefits and importance. And because of that, this group does already exist for several years, but what we are trying to do is trying to more concentrating also the group itself, and trying to think about new action ways for the group, developing a vision, and really trying to also collaborate with more activists from and other places in Israel, and also enriching the partners of the group, and trying to make progress in this really important direction. We are now standing in these weeks. We are developing new materials for public to raise awareness, and also we had a meeting, like initiating meeting of the project, of trying to think about our ways of doing all these things I mentioned, and developing a program for the group. And also, if you have more ideas, questions, I already heard a few ideas or more, I don't know, directions. I'll be happy to hear, and also, as Batel said, to share with us.
I think one of the things, Noga, we're very, very pleased to have you. Very, very pleased. And one of the things we all have to ask ourselves, we had a small grant from the Shelley Foundation, which has enabled us to give Noga a scholarship to work with us. It's shared with the Student Village. Other students are doing it with other organizations, and we're very lucky to have her. One of the questions we have to ask ourselves is, supposing we manage to raise a lot of funds in this case of trees, and this is something, Gary, that you might be able to help us with, and you, Noga, and all of us together, what would we do? What's the first thing we would do? Supposing someone gave us a gift, we were able to raise the funds, and we might even consider a crowdfunding scheme, and to aim for that goal and to do it, because I think there are a lot of people in the city who would contribute if we had specific goals and purposes, and we knew what we wanted to achieve. Do you know what you do if you suddenly had a lot of funding, Noga?
No, I just said that really last week we had a meeting of really beginning to work on the like visualizing the goals, like how we imagine what we want to do, and practically, and this is the progress we do now.
Good.
Yeah, it's a good question.
You know, Naomi, I think we have there's pieces of plans in many different departments. It doesn't sound to me like it's that well organized or coordinated. So I mean, the first thing I guess maybe you guys have a good handle on I'm new to this, but to get a really good handle on what we've got. And then when we assess that, then we could say, okay, then we know where the weak points are. And then once we know where those weak points are and where we need to go, then we paint a picture for people to get on board. I mean, we've got natural partners, like I was mentioning, in all these different areas. And we could, you know, I think raising funds is not a problem. We just give them a vision.
Oh, that sounds good, Gary. But I must tell you, would you say that we should try and get someone to do research onto what exactly the situation is, so that we could put our finger on the problem? And to know all the information that has been gathered and all the plans that are being put forward and what goes wrong. In fact, we know some of what goes wrong, because there are good laws in place to protect trees, but there are not punitive and enforcement measures in place to punish the contractors that Clear mentioned, who wantonly destroy trees on the property where they're developing a building, say, and their various trees have been marked for protection. I've been following a few in all the development next to where I live, and trees have just disappeared overnight. Right. Those are just the individual odd trees, not the 11,000 trees of Reches Laban, which are approved by a planning committee. And what do you do then? In one breath, the right hand of the municipality is saying trees are terribly important. We want to plan, we want to number our trees, we want to love our trees. And there we are, we're cutting down 11,000 of them. There are some contradictions in the way things are being run that we have to get to the bottom of somehow.
Well, I mean, I don't know what the street tree plan is. I mean, this is just my ignorance, because and some of it's a language barrier, because you know, Francine's a better student than me, and I haven't mastered my Hebrew yet. But you know, some of it is you know, what's the street tree plan? Where are the areas, and what are the key parks and the areas that need to be protected? And let's see the building plan for Jerusalem and beyond. And then once we see that, then when we get something to say, no, we like, we don't like, this is what we want to see, and we're going to go after enforcement for these things and maintenance, it's, you know, et cetera. I mean, one of the things I saw on the list today is just the trashing of even the open spaces. So one of the things is to just these open spaces and parks, and you know, not only to protect the trees, to make sure the trees are where they are, to make sure the open spaces are protected, and then to make sure those are quality places where we can be proud of. And you know, I don't see it, you know.
Lisa.
Yes, it would be wonderful to plant new trees. I think that's actually the easy part, but it's really the nurturing. Establishing a tree takes a lot of attention, and then you know, tending it over time is really the big thing. So I would think that it would be good to have that nurturing structure and the care of the trees in place before going out and getting the new trees. I've seen a lot of them die on the street. Lovely new saplings that are where I live in the Bronx, New York, because they weren't tended to. So that's my thought.
I see Shelley and Karen as well.
Yes, I'm afraid that the issues that we're discussing are not things that you can throw money at in order to improve. I mean, unless we use it perhaps for public relations, a really big campaign to influence the city to enforce the laws that are already in place. And do we have strong enough laws for, in terms of the building plans, to make sure that whole areas aren't obliterated in terms of putting the apartment buildings up? I mean,
we have laws, we don't have enforcement.
Yes, so I think
it's a major problem in Israel.
I think that's a bigger problem, you know, and we've had other conversations before where, and you've enlightened us as to what laws there are, but then there's always this caveat that they're not enforced. So what could we do if we had a major sum of money in terms of political influence and maybe public relations that would compel the city to pay more attention to the freedom that we give to builders, for instance? I mean, it's heartbreaking. It's really heartbreaking. I mean, and the subtlety of the new legislation in terms of, I can see that in terms of new plantings, we want to stick to things that are indigenous and that will do best in our area. But we don't want to devastate the landscape in the, you know, in the process of getting, you know, prejudicing against the existing trees because unless they're very damaging to the environment. But, you know, I think that it's nice to make a law like that, but it could backfire and cause more damage. So I think that my concern is that whatever we do, we need to strengthen the communication with the people who have the power and public relations in some way in order to use the talents of somebody like Noga and Gary to get the subtle information into the hands where it's needed, and not because, you know, when you pass a law that makes some guy look good, but he may not really have known the full impact of what he just approved or failed to approve. So to me, it's not planting trees that come first. It's protecting what we have.
I would give positive points to Alon Tal in this case. He has got a good environmental background. He established Adam Teva Badin. He established the Arava Institute. He was on the board of JNF for many years. And he cares apart from being a professor of environmental law. But even then, he can make mistakes. And even if the laws are passed, will they be enforced? Because the
Right.
current ones aren't being enforced. So I always come to the conclusion in the end that we need to establish a greater public presence, a greater shout being shouted by all of us and as many of us as we can produce.
Yeah.
We need an army. We need a civilian army that shows the powers that be in the municipality that this agenda is the most important agenda for the city. And if they don't honor it, they are not honoring the people who might perhaps vote them in.
Does the KKL have any say in this kind of thing?
Not inside the city.
Not inside the city.
Only in the Jerusalem forest, and even then they always give in. One of the
To
members
whom
of
do
our
they
lobby,
give in?
when I say give in, I'll give an example. One of the active groups in our lobby is fighting to protect 1,000 trees in the Har Nof corner of the Jerusalem forest that has been slated for educational projects. And when Kakal was approached, they said, oh yes, educational projects are very important, cut down the trees, but the residents are fighting. So we need the residents.
Yeah.
Karen.
Right.
Karen? You're on mute.
Mute.
Totally agree with the lack of enforcement and the lax enforcement of the laws that we already have. I agree with that. I want to say that a natural ally for us is the bird community. And a lot of people have noticed that there are fewer birds around now for a lot of reasons. But certainly one of them is the trees getting cut down. And there are virtual bird clubs and there are all kinds of societies. And that's an emotional issue that also attracts people and might make people a little more aware of what's going on in their neighborhood if they notice trees being targeted or to be cut down. I think this is a natural ally for us.
That's a very interesting point. Shoshana.
I want, maybe Shoshana, you could be our last question. I wanted to dedicate the last 5 minutes, and then if people want to stay after with me, I promised a couple people here in the Zoom room to just address what is going on with the plastic bottles and plastic waste, garbage, things like that in the city. I know it's a really hot topic. We can stand about it all day, but I will take the last 5 minutes to talk about it after your question, Shoshana.
Okay, practical thing. Almost every tree that I've seen has a number on it now. I want to know when I see them cutting down a tree that has a number, who do I call? Because if enough of us do that in our neighborhood, that may make an impact.
Okay. If you see a tree with a number on it, then it does mean that it was recorded. So if you take the number of that tree, and this is, it's a little complicated, but on the website of the municipality, you got to go through the website. Maybe I'll find the link and I'll send it to everybody in email directly when I send us the summary of this meeting, including our action points of this meeting, which is exactly this, but I'll just say it, on one foot. There's a link on the website of the municipality that takes you to the municipal agronom, who is the person who's in charge of cutting down trees, i.e. approving or not approving them to be cut down. And anybody could appeal a particular cutting down of a tree here or there, especially if you have that number. And if you don't have that number, you would have to give the most exact location as much as you possibly can. And you leave your contact information for them to follow up with you. So there is a proper avenue to do such a thing. It's not very fast though. Okay.
Batel, is there an emergency number anywhere?
That's really the only route. I know, it's pretty terrible. The way to solve it in an emergency situation is calling the cops. Really.
Really?
Yeah.
They come
They come.
eventually.
They don't really know what to do, but they'll be there. But they'll help you file a complaint.
But that should be publicized that people could do that.
Yeah.
It's an
Yeah, it
option. No one
should.
thought
That
of
should be an action point, but then,
Yeah, I'm gonna put that in our notes, okay?
good.
Okay, everybody's questions are really good and they're good, you know, and sometimes we don't yet have the policy, you know, how do we get any law really to be enforced? I mean, that's like a huge issue. And obviously we're gonna probably be dealing with that forever. But in what Gary said in the very beginning of building coalition around trees is something that we've begun to do and we need to do more of it. And hopefully with our new program and our mini funding, we'll be able to proceed in that light. So please God, we will do that. Just to totally change the subject for 5 minutes, because a lot of people have asked us, email, WhatsApp, phone calls to me and to Nomi and to anybody, and even to some of you, you've received phone calls and didn't know how to answer. So what's going on with the plastic bottles? The government, I mean, like the government of the state of Israel passed a law some time ago, which came into effect now, which is that the larger plastic bottles, 1.5 liters and larger bottles are now part of the redemption program as the smaller ones were for 30 agurot. And so because that is the main bottles that we would and still have been putting into the cages of plastic bottles, they no longer need to go into cages because in theory, we're taking them now to supermarkets and getting our 30 agurot back, whether it's into the mini mart or the supermarket, or some places have new machines for such. Like if you know, in Manhattan, they had these kind of machines a long time ago in some other states as well. And it like crushes it and makes a funny noise. And then it spits out your coins. That has not happened in the large scale in which the government wanted it to happen, but it will just take some more time. So those cages are being removed in the whole country, not just in Jerusalem. Specifically to Jerusalem, they are being removed, but they were being removed even before that law took place. Why? Because the mayor, Moshe Laon, wanted to take back the sidewalks and clean up the streets, which is not a bad thing. It's just that the people who care about recycling kind of like freaked out. So his claim and what happens in Jerusalem, which is unique, is that Jerusalem has a recycling facility where all of the waste that's thrown into normal garbage bins gets sent to, called Green Net. It's located in Atarot, which is north of the city. And in that facility, garbage trucks upon garbage trucks drive there, they dump their waste, and they get sorted out between plastics, paper, organics, glass, metal, all kinds of things via a whole complicated system of conveyor belts and things like that, not people, but it's like a giant robot sort of machine working system. Everything gets sorted out and divided, and then those materials are then sent off to respective either recycling companies, or it's shipped overseas and perhaps being recycled overseas, or it's being shipped to another country and flown to another country and then being burnt, or just sitting somewhere else in the world and just causing a problem and littering somewhere else. I don't want to get too deep into it, but it's worthwhile everybody looking it up. The issue of recycling, specifically plastics in the world, not just in Israel, is a huge problem. In other words, there is way more being produced today than we would even possibly have any capacity to recycle. So the bottom line is two bottom lines. One is the way to combat it is to use less, buy and use less plastic and materials that can't be recycled anymore because we don't have enough need. There's no demand anymore for second round materials for whatever reasons those are. And as consumers, we need to demand that from companies in which that we purchase things from. So for example, if I buy crackers I can opt for a box of crackers, which inside has a plastic bag, or I can buy a bag of crackers that just has the bag. So if I do that comparison, then I should take the bag of crackers. So I'm cutting out at least the extra packaging from the bag in the box. Is the bag perfect? No. Is there less packaging than that one than with the 2 layers? Yes. So we have to kind of reinvent how we're doing things. Nomi and I next week have a meeting with the new local, small, little, tiny business that is working on combating that by refilling stations. Instead of every month buying another bottle of hand soap, another bottle of shampoo, another bottle of whatever cleaning liquid, you bring your own container and you refill in bulk every time, and you're constantly reusing your own bottle as opposed to rebuying it every single time. So there's all different ways that we can combat that as consumers. But going back to the issue of Jerusalem, all of your waste is being dumped in the facility in Atarot and separating out, maybe being recycled, maybe not. So is it dim and sad? Yes. And that's the way that the world is going right now, and Jerusalem no different. However, we do have a different national law that is saying that we're required to have orange bins, which you've seen in other municipalities and other places in Israel, to separate out those orange packaging. And because Jerusalem doesn't do it, it's actually breaking the law. And there's talk now of perhaps suing the municipality for not providing its residents with orange bins, but that's not really necessarily the root of the problem. I'm going to end it there. You can certainly ask me more questions about this. I'll stay here. If people have to go, you can go. But I want to give Marianne the opportunity to officially close the meeting, and I'll hang around. Thank you.
Well, that was really interesting. Well, I would just like to thank Gary, and Noga is actually gone now. She had to leave the meeting. And it's been a really stimulating and thought-provoking subject evening. And if you have any questions or you want to know more, you can email Naomi and Batel, as they both said. And is that all I need to say? Yeah, thank you very much. And keep thinking about what ideas you might have in response to the things that were spoken about. So yeah, thank you very much, everybody. See you next time.
Marianne, for being a very gracious hostess.
Well, now I can do it again if I need to improve.
Can I make a quick comment? It's so sad about the recycling, because people have been educated to recycle, and kids have been educated to recycle, and all of a sudden, all that's gone.
Well, can I just add that
I would love to add a comment about that, because one of the things we haven't mentioned at this meeting is a subject that we did deal with in our previous meeting on the circular economy, and the one before that when we spoke about composting and food rescue. One of the greatest issues in solid waste all over the world, certainly here, at least 45% of our solid waste is organic. And that is something that we, by our personal behavior, can change. We can take out all the organic stuff from what we throw out and make sure that only dry stuff gets to GreenNet in Atarot. If only dry stuff gets to GreenNet, they have a good chance of sorting it out. And if ever there's a good solution then for the end use of it, because we all know there's no such thing as throwing away, because there is no away. You're throwing it somewhere else, and it's dirtying someone else's backyard. So but we can take responsibility for our organic waste and cut down the volume of the waste considerably. And we can use it in our neighborhoods, in our plant pots, in our gardens, in our local, there's a local composting box in every neighborhood. So that's something we can do. And we're happy to help people do more of that. If they're interested in it, just contact us and say.
Can I just say that the building's a real problem. I don't know if you've heard this, but the idea around the world to meet sustainability or to empty the countryside is to create smart cities. Have you heard this term, smart cities, Enio? Okay, so this means stuffing, frankly, the maximum number of people into whatever space there is. And I don't really know what happens to trees because they need space to grow. So, I mean, I think that it's worth asking the municipality if actually they've officially signed up to this kind of targets because if they have, then the presence of trees is going to be a real struggle, to get more greening the cities, because really
Jerusalem has set itself a goal of adding thousands and thousands of housing units. And one of the issues is, what kind of quality of life will there be for the people who buy those housing units and come to live in them? And that's something that I think the city is beginning to understand. Beginning, not saying it understands it yet. It is beginning to think about it and try to understand it. That you not only need to build an apartment, you need to be able to market it and sell it. And the case was made with a project that I was privileged to lead, the Gazelle Valley. The Gazelle Valley Park was supposed to be all built up because we have to build wherever we can and provide housing units. But because it wasn't, because it was protected as a park, all the neighborhoods around it are being built up very intensively. And that's okay, because everyone can go for a walk and get some fresh air and relax. And their mental and physical health can be helped and assisted by having a lovely walk in the Gazelle Park. But we have to make sure that we have Gazelle Parks for everybody, everywhere, and we can't just build it. This is the kind of awareness that we have to work to create. On the other hand, the city will tell you that they're building tall towers just for that reason. I've got one just opposite my house. I watch it every morning. I find it quite frightening. There's going to be another one next door to it. Well, the thing about it is, they're saying we're saving open space by building this big, tall tower. What do you want of us? So we have to think of that.
Well, the other thing is that these buildings create a lot of shade. I mean, that's the other problem, actually. They create a lot of shade and take sunlight away from lower, So all these things, I mean, it is a quality of life which will deteriorate rapidly. And, if you miss birds and other wildlife, then you're just going to live in a barren kind of environment where people are just going to go crazy.
And then some of them will tell you people want to live in Manhattan. So we have to be careful how we put our arguments and how we argue our case. Anyway, we go with Carol will tell us.
Elisa,
You're
do
right.
you want to say something? You still have your hand up.
Yes. Hi, yes. There are interesting products that are available. Some of them are really very old-fashioned. Like recently, I tried a new kind of shampoo. It's a bar of shampoo, and it's a conditioning shampoo. So just like one wipe through my hair and a lot of suds and a rinse, and I'm saving time and saving water also, instead of the shampoo and then conditioner. And on the website of this company, it's called Chagrin Valley. They explain that in the old days, all the soaps, everything came in a bar. So laundry soap, you might grate it. My mother had milk and meat, bars of coconut soap, and that's what we wash the dishes with. And it comes in a little cardboard box. So that's just like one example of a product that can make a big difference. With all the plastic bottles, it solves so many problems. And then there are soda maker bottles. You have your own soda maker, you fill your own bottles with soda. So you don't have to be buying all these bottles of soda. And somehow, I tell you, we have a problem at my house, because when the garbage men come, when we put out the garbage, they can't find the garbage because it's a tiny little bag and is way at the bottom. And I had to prop it up with a cardboard box so they will see the garbage. And when you do the composting and go for, renewable, sustainable products, it's like the garbage disappears. So it really can be done. And I hope that everyone could have the problem that I have, that the garbage men can't find their garbage because it's so small.
That's the zero waste philosophy.
Yeah. Naomi, could you get a radio slot every week could you, on Jerusalem
what a
radio
lovely
or
idea,
something?
Marianne. Yes, that's what we'll do. Well, actually, we have a spokesperson, Anat Cohen, who is getting us into the Hebrew press an awful lot. We've been very, very present in the Hebrew press, and she's talking about a regular slot on the Jerusalem radio station. So that may be happening.
Oh,
and
that's good.
Ask different members of the different organizations in our lobby to speak on different issues. We'll get all the voices to be heard, and we'll make it another way of expressing our coalition of organizations.
And could we not, there was this thing about plastic bags. Why can't they just be banned? Why can they not just be banned, say in Jerusalem,
what a good
for example? Or we could just, because there are all these, I had these very thin cloth bags from India, from probably recycled materials or saris. I mean, this costs nothing to, and that people can just reuse them all the time. Or you could sell them for a shekel at the end, or each shop in the shuk or something like that. I don't know. I mean,
sounds good. But I see another hand up in the corner, Roberta. But you're
Hi, we have two questions. One is, you mentioned 11,000 olive trees that may be cut down for construction. Who owns those olive trees? Are they by municipality, Jerusalem Forest, or privately owned? And the other question is, what is how the tree program, how is that working in East Jerusalem? Those two questions.
Who is asking that?
Bennett Simon.
Bennett Simon. Ah, Bennett, I just couldn't see your face off the screen. And it said Roberta, so I was looking for Roberta.
Yeah.
Yes, I couldn't rename it. Never mind. The issue of East Jerusalem is the same as West Jerusalem from the point of view of the responsibility of the municipality. There is an increasing responsibility for the public domain. There are a lot of improvement of roads and sidewalks and public facilities is now being invested in East Jerusalem. What we need in the Jerusalem Green Fund is more stakeholders from East Jerusalem to take part in the public voice, because we represent whoever we are. So if there are an awful lot of people from Almona Natsiv, then all Almona Natsiv's issues will always be being talked about. If we have, it's a question of who's in and who's active. And we're working with, in our lobby, we have Tzur Bahar, which is a big neighborhood at the other side of the Olive Valley, and they're part of the fight to protect the valley, and we're working with them. But we need more individual Jerusalemites who will actually become stakeholders. And if any of you know any people in East Jerusalem who you think would like to join, then we'll meet with them and discuss with them how, because in East Jerusalem, there is less of a concept of the capacity for civil society to have an impact on what is happening. We realize we're not going to get anything if we don't fight for it. They think that if something isn't happening, it's not being provided, but it won't be provided if they don't fight for it. So it's a delicate balance, and it's not an easy situation. Because they're also under pressure from other places. And if they deal and treat with the municipality, then they are accused by other forces from outside Jerusalem of recognizing Jerusalem's sovereignty over East Jerusalem. So it's a kind of, you're damned if you do and damned if you don't. They're in a difficult place, but things are changing. Things are changing slowly but surely, through friendships, professional collaborations. We have a wonderful civil society organization called Kayani, working in East Jerusalem, that is a member of our lobby, and they work openly with the municipality municipality with all the groups in West Jerusalem. It's not that they don't consider themselves good Arab citizens. They feel they want to improve their environment, which is what it's all about.
Mhm. That's helpful. And these 11,000 olive trees that you had mentioned that might
No,
be.
it's 11,000 trees in Rechis Lavan and a few hundred trees in the Olive Valley. Now, olives are a tricky business because olives are one of the few kinds of trees that can actually be dug up and moved and put somewhere else. Very few trees can survive that. Olive trees can if it's done properly. And the municipality often removes trees from somewhere and says, don't worry, these are olive trees, we're putting them somewhere else. So one of the things we should be doing, in my opinion, is asking, where are you putting them? And we need to keep track of them because it's not that simple. So a lot of it is about tracking and awareness.
That's a great idea.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Pleasure. And thank you for joining us.
Any more questions either about generally about trees or about waste or anything? If not, we'll call it a night.
Oh my goodness, yes, we've gone over time, overboard. And thank you, Gary. Thank you, everyone. We've had good attendance and a very good discussion and a wonderful hostess. And just, we need to do a lot more for our trees.
Thank you, Naomi.
Okay, I have everybody's email addresses, so I'll be in touch. We'll send a summary and some action points. And again, be in touch with myself or with Nomi going forward. And if anybody has questions about becoming stakeholders, please do. We really encourage it. It's so important. And
we're very good at helping people to become stakeholders. We've really become good at that.
Ambassador.
Thank you so much. It's really great. Thank you.
Okay. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Bye. Thank you. Shalom, shalom.
Shalom, shalom.